Hello, we are going to use Jupyter for Python programming. To install Jupyter in your system, go to Google and type Anaconda download in your browser. Go to the first link, which is individual edition, and if you go to the bottom of the page, you will find Anaconda installer for Windows, Mac, and Linux. If you have Windows, choose one of these links. And if you have Mac, you can use these links, and if you have Linux, you should choose one of these links. For example, I have Windows 64, so I need to click on this one and wait for download. After download, go to the download folder of your system and you can find Anaconda there. Double click on that one and click on next. I agree, next, 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 and wait for installation. After installation, go to the search of your computer and search Anaconda. You will notice Anaconda Navigator here, so double click on that one to open Anaconda. It's gonna take some time. So this is the basic windows of Anaconda. So you can find many things other than Jupyter here, but the things that we are going to use right now is the Jupyter Notebook. So launch Jupyter Notebook. And you will notice that this window will be appeared, and here if you go to new, you will notice that you have Python 3 there, and click on the Python 3, and here we go. So you have the Jupyter environment, and we are going to write all our codes here in this environment. To define a value for a variable or assign a value for the variable, you need to use assignment mark or equal mark. For example, you say that I have age as a variable and I want to assign 30, the number 30 as a value for this variable. So you can write age is equal to 30. So 30 is a value and age is a variable, so to define that we use equal sign. If you want to run this single code, you can click on run here, and this line will be run. And right now you have, if you click on age and click on run, you can see that the value 30 is assigned for age. For example, you want to define another variable, weight, and its value is, for example, 79. Okay. Another way to run the code in the Jupyter, in addition of clicking on run, is clicking on shift enter. So if you click on shift enter, it will be equal to clicking on run. So we are going to use shift enter because it's much easier. So we define two variables, age and weight, and we want to print these variables in the output. Okay, so you can use print function, and in the print function everything should be between parentheses, and anything that comes between, you can write, for example, age here is a variable name, and if you run this one, you will see that 30 will be appeared in the output. Or you can print weight and you can print a weight there. You want to make it a little bit look nicer, so for example, you want to say that my age is 30. Okay, so for that you can use again print And to write my name, you need to use double quotation or single quotation. Anything that you are writing between double quotation and single quotation will appear exactly in the output. For example, you are writing hi there, okay, and if you run this, you will notice that hi there is exactly appeared in the output. And it doesn't matter if you want to use in the double quotation, for example, hi there, and it will be exactly the same. So double quotation or single quotation, you can use any of them that you want. So right now we want to print and say my age is, okay, and then we want to write print age, okay. So if you run this, you will see that it's saying my name is 30. Another method that you can write this instead of using print 2 times is that print my name is age. Okay, so if you run this one, it says that, let's put this one here, my name is 30, and okay, let's have an example to work with the variables and assign value for those variables. So let's start with a simple example. For example, we are going to calculate velocity. So to calculate velocity, we are going to define variables. The first variable will be distance, which its value will be 12 meters. And the second variable will be time, which its value will be 3 seconds. And we are going to use this formula to calculate the velocity. So let's see how we can write the code to calculate velocity in Jupyter. So back to the Jupyter. So we need to define 2 variables. The first variable will be distance, and its value will be 12. Run. The second variable will be time, and its value will be 3 seconds. And then we are going to define another variable, velocity, which velocity will be distance divided by time, and then run. Now we calculate velocity and we want to print velocity in the output. So first way, we can write the velocity, we can write print velocity, and if we print that, you will notice that the velocity is 4. But we can make it to look a little bit better, so we can write print, and between double quotation or single quotation we can write the velocity is, and then velocity, and then we can write, for example, the unit for the velocity, which in this case is meter per second. So if we run that, you can see here the output will be the velocity is 4 meters per second. So this is one simple example to show how we can assign a variable and how we can assign a value for the variable and how we can calculate. Okay, let's have an example to work with the variables and assign value for those variables. So let's start with a simple example. For example, we are going to calculate velocity. So to calculate velocity, we are going to define variables. The first variable will be distance, which its value will be 12 meter, and the second variable will be time, which its value will be 3 seconds. And we are going to use this formula to calculate the velocity. So let's see how we can write the code to calculate velocity in Jupyter. So back to the Jupyter. So we need to define two variables. The first variable will be distance, and its value will be 12. Run. The second variable will be time, and its value will be 3 seconds. And then we are going to define another variable, velocity, which velocity will be distance divided by time, and then run. Now we calculate the velocity, and we want to print velocity in the output. So first way, we can write the velocity. We can write print velocity, and if we print that, you will notice that the velocity is 4. But we can make it to look a little bit better, so we can write print, and between double quotation or single quotation we can write the velocity is, and then velocity, and then we can write, for example, the unit for the velocity, which in this case is meter per second. So if we run that, you can see here the output will be the velocity is 4 meter per second. So this is the one simple example to show how we can assign a variable and how we can assign a value for the variable and how we can calculate. Okay, let's talk about the standard data types in Python. We have 5 data types in Python. They are number, string, list, tuple, and dictionary. We are going to talk about these data types. So first data type that we want to talk is number. Basically in Python we have 3 types of number. Integer numbers, so the type for the integer number we call that with int, and it's basically integer number, for example 10, 15, 20, those kind of numbers. Then we have float number. Float number are the real numbers. For example, we say 1.3, 1.2, all those are the float numbers. And then we have complex numbers. So complex numbers have 2 parts, real part and the imaginary part, and something like, for example, 3 plus 2j. So it's the complex number. So basically what you need to know right now is that we have 3 types of numbers: integer, float, and complex. Let's discover some of these numbers in the Jupyter. So go to your Jupyter and, for example, define a variable x and put the value of 3 for the x and run the code. Right now we define the x as a variable and we want to see what's the type of x. So to check the type of x, you can type and between parentheses you can give the variable name, and then if you run that, Python will tell you that the type of x, variable x, is integer. Let's have another variable y and put the value of, for example, 1.6 to y. And right now we want to check the type of y, and as you can see here, type of y is a float. It means that y is a float number because y is a real number. And z, for example, is 4 plus 3j. Okay, and run, and we want to check the type of z, which it will be complex. So in general, in summary, we can have three types of numbers in the Python. Integer number, so basically it's the integer number, for example 3 or 5 or 12 or 20. All those are the integer numbers, and the type of their type is integer. We can have real numbers like 1.6 and its type is float, and we can have a imaginary complex number which consists of a real part and imaginary part, and its type is a complex. Another data type that we have in Python is a string. So for example, imagine we have variable again, for example x, and as you saw before, for a string we need to write it in the between double quotation or single quotation. For example, we define variable x and we write, for example, inside the quotation double quotation hi there. Okay, so now we define variable x, and which x is a string, and the string is hi there, and it should be between double quotation or single quotation. So if you run this line and then check the type of x, as you can see we have a string type here and x is a string. Okay, one of the good things about the string in the Python is that you can have access to every single character inside the string. For example, if you want to access to get age from hider, you can write x0. Okay, so it means that I want, if from x variable I want 0 character, so 0 character will be age. So basically in the Python, in the string, the characters are starting from 0, so h will be 0, I will be 1, space will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we are counting from 0 and to 7 for the hider characters of hider. So for example, if we want to get access to this t, we need to write h, and for the number 0, 1, 2, 3. So if you write 3, we can access to the t there. So you have access for the every single character inside the string, and also you can count from the opposite direction. So for example, you can write h, for example, -1, and as you can see here, h -1 corresponds to this character e, the last e. It means that in the Python you can count from this direction, and it will be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and so on. So for example, if we want to access t from this direction, we can write x, and we can count -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5. So x -5 will be t there. So let's continue to discover what we can do with the string. So another thing that we can do is in the string, for example, if you want to, for example, separate hi from the whole string, so you can write x 0 to 2. Okay, so it means that from this x I want to separate characters that start from 0 to up to 2. It means that 0 and 1. So 0 will be H and 1 will be I. So if you run this one, it will be hello, hi. So this hi corresponds to the character 0 and 1. If you notice here, the first number that you are writing is counting. So Python is going to start from this one, but it's not going to include the last one, which is 2. Okay, so in this case of 0 to 2, Python is going to include character number 0 and character number 1, which it will be H and I. Okay. Another thing that we can do, for example, if we want to separate there from hi there, and we want to write something like this, so what we can do, we know that so we should start from one point and end to another point. So what will be the start point? The start point will be 0, 1, 2, 3. So t is a 3, the number for the t is 3, so we can write here, and the last one is a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But if we write 7, it means that this e is not going to include that in the final. So we need to write 8, and because 8 is not going to include. So there is separated from the hi there. Another method to write this, instead of counting all to the end, we can write that x starts from 3 and go on whatever we have. So if you run this one, it will be same as this one. So both of them are the same. Or we can have a opposite one as well. For example, if we want to separate hi and we don't want to use this format, so we can say x, anything before x, anything before 2. So if it means that I want to character number anything before character number 2. So if you run this one, it will be the same as hi. So these are the basic methods to access the characters inside the string. So let's add some line to get here. So I'm going to define another variable. I'm going to put it as y, and in this time I'm going to use a single quotation. So for example, how are you? Okay, so this we define another string, which is the variable y, and the string is how are you. So let's run this one, and we want to change every single character inside the y to the lowercase. So we can write y dot lower. So if you write y dot lower, and if you run that, as you notice here, every single character in the y string is changed to the lowercase. And similarly, you can change everything to the uppercase with y dot upper, and everything is going to change to the uppercase. Another thing that you need to know is that you can split the string. For example, here I want to split this string to how, are, and you. So basically, I am going to split based on the space that we have between these words. So I can write y dot split. Okay, and inside the parentheses, you need to tell the Python that you are going to split based on what. So here I'm going to say I'm going to split based on space. And so if you run this, Python is going to split your string to how R and U based on the space, or you can split based on anything that you want. Okay, so another thing that I want to talk right now is that if you, for example, write y dot and tab, you can see many things, that everything that you can do with a string. For example, we already talked about split and upper and the lower, so but it's not limited to those couple things. So you can find many other things that you can do with the strings if you after that if you click on the tab. And another thing that we want to talk is that, for example, we have one variable x here and another one is y here. So let me write them here as well to make it a little bit clear. So we have two variables x and y, they are a string, and we want to concatenate these two. Okay, so what we are going to have, we want to have another variable z, and we want to, it will be the sum of these two. Okay, so concatenate these two, so it will be hi there, how are you. So we can use plus sign, and then if we check z, as you can see here, with plus sign we can concatenate two variables together. Okay, so for example, if here we don't have a space and we want to add one space here as well, so we can write like this. So we have two variables that are string. We had another string here, and the z will be the sum of all those strings. So you can have z. Another data types that we are going to use it a lot in the Python programming is list. Okay, so basically list is a data type that is going to be between the brackets, and every item inside the bracket will be separated with commas. For example, so we are defining A as a list, and the list contains of 1, for example, 1, 10, 3.6, David. So this is a list. Okay, so we define A as a list, and every item should be between brackets, and items are separating with commas. And if you notice from this example, items can be integer numbers, can be a string, or can be even list inside the list, or other things. So Python is pretty flexible for that. So you can use any integer, float number, or a string, or even list inside the list. So like strings, you have access to many things here. For example, if you want to get, for example, 10, it means a second item inside the list, you can say that A, so the second one will be 0, 0 will be the first item, and the second item will be 1. So if you write A1, so you are going to get 10. And like a string, for example, if you want to get 3.6, you can say A2. So basically Python is going to start from here, and the index assigned for the 1 will be 0, index assigned for 10 will be 1, and index assigned for the 3.6 will be 2. So if you write the index, you can get that value. Now For example, we want to access 1 and 10 inside this list, so we can say A 0 2, for example 2. So it means that inside A, list A, I want any items that start from the index 0 and end in the index 2, but I don't want to include index 2. So it will be 1, 0, index 0 will be 1, and index 2 will be 10. So right now we have a list, and this list is containing of the item 1 and item 2. And anything that we done for the, pretty much anything that we done for the string, for example selection or getting subset from the string, you can do that for the list as well. The most important things that you need to know about the list is that you can edit the list. For example, type A that we have the list, and then dot, and then click on tab. If you click on tab, you notice that you can do many things with this list. Okay, so let's talk about some of these one by one. First is a.append. So if you click on a.append, and what a.append is doing, for example, if you want to add something at the end of this list, for example, you have 1, 10, 3.6 David, and right now you want to add, for example, number 25 after David. So you want to add 25 at the end of the list. So you can use append, and what value you want to add is 25, and you can run. Right now, if you check A, you notice that 25 is added at the end of the list. Okay, so another thing is that, let me add some, okay, another thing that you can do, for example, clear. So if you a.clear clears the list, so if you type that the list will be clear, you can copy that, or you can count any item inside the list. For example, a.count, and we want to count that, see how many 10 we have inside the list. Okay, so if you write 10 here, it will say that you only have 1 10 in the list. Okay, so let's modify the list a little bit to have more diverse. Let's add one item for the list. So we know that we can add append. We can use append and add, for example, another 25 at the end of the list. So right now our new list will be 110 3.6 David 25 25. And right now we want to know how many 25 we have in the list. So we can use a.count here, and then we can write 25, and it says that you have 225 inside the list. Okay, another things that you can do for the list is that, for example, is the index. Okay, let's go for the index. So you want to know, for example, if the index of 3.6. okay, so you want to know the exact location of 3.6 in the list. We know that, for example, here 3.6 is the index for the 3.6 is 0 1 and 2, so it's 2. So if we want to check it, we can write here 3.6, and then we can get the index for this 3.6. You don't need to memorize everything, so what you need to do is that you learn that if you, after that, if you click on the tab, you have everything that you need here, so you can select one of those, the one that you have, and then use that. For example, let's go, for example, a.insert, and you want to know how you can use n.insert. So what you need to do is click on Shift tab, and if you click on Shift tab, it's have some help for you to how you can use, for example, insert here for the list. Okay, so it says that when you are going to insert, use the insert, you want to add something to the list, So first things that you need to tell the Python is the index where you are going to add the item. For example, I am going to add something between 3.6 and David. Okay, and it is for example, it's a string and it's high. Okay, so I'm going to add high between 3.6 and David. So first things that I need to do is that first I need to say what will be the index, the location that you want to insert that high. So the index will be 0, 1, 2, 3. So you are going to put it in the 3. And the next one, shift tab. If you shift tab, you will see it here, is the object. What you are going to add here in the index 3. And we are saying that I'm going to add high there. So if you run that and check for A, you will notice that high is located in the index 3 between 3.6 and David. And another thing that you can do is that you can use pop. What doing pop? Pop is removing item at the end of the list. Okay, for example, you have this list and you want to delete the last item in the list, so you can use a.pop, and if you use that one, it will say that and 25 is removed from the list, and if you check the list, you will notice that 25 is already removed. And so it is exactly the opposite function of the append that we use here. So append is adding something at the end of the list, and pop is removing something from at the end of the list. And other things that you have, you can insert some item in the list, and you can remove some item as the list with the a.remove or there. So remove can remove one item from the list. Or you can sort the items, for example, because we use, for example, a string here. So if you use sort right now, you are going to get error. But if you have, for example, let's see, for example, define another list, it is just numbers, for example, 2, 10, 12, and 36. And again 5, 4. Okay, and you are going to sort this, so you can use the first we need to run this. Oops. Okay, so you need to use comma, and right now you want to use sort. Okay, so if you use sort, you are going to have B, which is sorted and start from 2, 4, 5, 10, 12, and 36. So you can use that. So this is a pretty much that you can do with the list in the beginning of your learning. So the first thing that you need to remember is that you have access to every single item inside the list with using the index. And then you can modify the list, for example, add something to the list, remove something from the list. You can count the item number of the items that you have in the list, and you can sort the list. You can access to the index. You can insert, remove any item from the list, and so on. Tuples are another data types that we have in Python. So tuples are a sequence of the data that they should be inside the parentheses, and they are separating with the comma. For example, we are defining b as a variable, tuple variable, and inside the tuple we have one integer number, and we have real number, we have a string, and we have, for example, another number. Okay, so this b is a tuple. The data type for the b is tuple. We can check it with the type, and says that it's a tuple. So tuple should be between parentheses and the items are separating with a comma. The big difference between tuple and the list is that in the list you can edit the list. For example, you can add something to the list or remove something from the list, or replace some item, add some item or something like that. But in the tuple you can't do that. So tuples are basically read only, so you can't edit the tuples. For example, if you check this tab, you will see that you have only two options. First is a count, which is counting the number of the items. For example, we are counting how many 12 we have in the tuple, and it says we only have one tuple. And another one is the index. So basically it's going to say what is the index of the, for example, David. So it will be the index 2. But so this is basically what you can do with the tuple. Another thing that you can do is that you have access to every single item, same as the list. For example, you can say B1. So B1 will be the second item, which was 2.5. Or you can separate the tuple. For example, say, for example, 2 to the last, so it's gonna be another tuple which is starting from 2 and going to end of the tuple. So this is the another data type that we are dealing in Python, and the difference between tuple and the list is that you can change the list, you can add item to the list, you can remove item from the list, but in the tuple you can't add anything on the tuple, and you have just access to the index and you can't do anything with that, and it's only read only type of the data type. The last data type that we are going to talk is a dictionary. So basically dictionary is a data type that it consists of a key and value. Okay, for example, let's define D as a variable, and this is gonna be dictionary variable, so it should be inside curly braces, and then we need to have key and corresponding value for that key. What I mean, for example, let's say we have the name of the people, for let's say for example David, and also we have the age for that, so 20. So David here is a key and 20 is value, so value assigned for David. So if we want to add another item to dictionary, we need to use comma and then, for example, another name. Let's say for example Chad, and Chad has 34 years old. Again, Chad is a key and 34 is value. So let's add another name, for example Rose, and Rose has, for example, 42 years old. Okay, so we have a name and we have age for the name. So these names are key, and these values, the ages that we put there, is values. Okay, so let's check the type of D, and Python say that you define dictionary and D is dictionary. So what you can do with D, again, if you say D dot and then click on tab, you will see all the actions that you can do with the dictionary. So obviously you can clear or copy the dictionary, but the most important things that you right now you need to know is that if you write d.keys, it's gonna list all the keys that you have in the dictionary. Or you can access for the values if you type d.values, so you are going to get the list of the all values that you have here. Or for example, if you want to see what is the value associated with the, for example, chat. So it means that what will be the age of the chat. So you can write D and then put the key value to get the value corresponding for that key. And another things that you can have all the items. So if you use items, Python is going to give a list that consists of the key and the value for all of the items inside the dictionary. So you can do another action. For example, you can pop, or you can update values and other things that you can discover what else you can do with the dictionaries